A man clearing out his late father's dresser found an old wristwatch in a drawer, a plain thing on a cracked leather strap, the crystal scratched, not running, and almost dropped it in the bin because a dead watch on a broken strap looks like the definition of worthless. He kept it only because it was his father's. Here's what he couldn't see. Most vintage watches at estate sales and flea markets sell for under $200, but rare models from ordinary-looking brands can fetch anywhere from $2,000 to $500,000, and the difference is invisible on the wrist, hidden in a reference number, a movement, and a name printed under the 12. That's not a coincidence. The watch didn't become valuable the day someone recognized it. It was always valuable. The value was lost the moment it passed from someone who didn't know what they held to someone who did. And that gap is where almost all the money in the vintage watch world lives. Here's the thing about common watches specifically. Everyone assumes the valuable watches are the obvious luxury names, the ones with the crown or the famous script, so they ignore everything else. And that assumption is the whole trap, because some of the biggest sleepers wear names you'd walk straight past. Hamilton, Bulova, Tissot, Seiko, Omega, names that sat in every mid-century jewelry shop and now hide real money in specific models. To you, it's an old watch, dated and probably broken, worth nothing. To a collector, it's a brand, a reference, a movement, a dial, a set of details that decide whether you're holding a $20 castoff or a piece worth thousands. The real question isn't whether old watches are worth money. It's why the valuable ones stay so cheap in the owner's hands, and who benefits. The answer: knowledge here sits in very few hands, it's rarely volunteered, and a whole resale economy runs on it. So here are 10 common watches that ordinary people own without knowing they're worth a fortune in 2026. One warning first, and it matters more than anything else. Do not polish the case. Do not refinish or restore the dial. And do not throw the watch out because it doesn't run. Because the vintage watch market is more sensitive to originality than almost any other category. A refinished dial can lose 40 to 60% of the value against an honest original. A polished case with rounded edges is permanently diminished, and a non-running watch only costs the price of a service to revive, which is a rounding error against what the right piece is worth. Leave it exactly as it is. The first is the Omega that isn't a Seamaster. The everyday Omega people assume is worth its scrap gold. Omega made millions of watches, and while a plain one is modest, the specific models climb hard. The Constellation with its pie-pan dial, so called because the dial slopes down at the edges like an upturned pie tin, is one of the most beautiful and undervalued vintage watches going, and the Seamaster and DeVille dress pieces from the 50s and 60s carry real collector demand. Pre-owned vintage Omega generally starts around $2,000 for the right model. The tell is the model name under the 12 and the reference and serial inside the caseback, which date the piece precisely. Flip it over, read the caseback, and leave the dial exactly as it is. The next one wears an American name people think stopped mattering decades ago. The second is the vintage Hamilton, a brand that built its reputation on railroad-grade accuracy and then made history. The one to know is the Ventura, the dramatic, asymmetric, shield-shaped watch from 1957 that was the world's first electric wristwatch, worn by Elvis and later associated with the movies, and it regularly sells from $500 to $6,000 and beyond. Beyond the Ventura, Hamilton's Art Deco pieces from the 30s and 40s in solid 14-karat gold bring a few $100s on the strength of the case and the era, and the brand holds the record for the most film appearances of any watchmaker, over 500, which keeps collector interest high. The seller sees an old American watch from a name they associate with cheap modern pieces. The buyer knows the Ventura and the gold deco models and pays for them. If that surprised you, the next is the tuning fork watch that hums instead of ticks. The third is the Bulova Accutron, powered not by a balance wheel but by a tuning fork that vibrates at high frequency, so it hums rather than ticks, and the second hand glides smoothly instead of stepping. The Accutron 214, especially the Spaceview, with its skeletonized dial that shows the movement and the tuning fork through the front, is a genuine piece of horological history that can often still be found for under $1,000, which makes it a sleeper. Bulova's other lines climb too. The automatic dive watches, the oceanographer, and the snorkel from the 60s and 70s have a cult following, and the rule there is specific. The bezel must be intact because replacements are nearly impossible to find, and an original bracelet adds real value. Don't dismiss a Bulova as a drugstore watch. The hum of an Accutron is the sound of money. Now, let me say one thing, and then I will not bring it up again. I have gathered this way of looking at things into a book, and the link is down in the description. It is not about watches in particular. It is about the 5 questions you ask of anything old: what it is made of, who made it, when, whether it is genuine, and what people have actually paid. That is the eye. If you want it, it is there. That is all. Now, back to the watches. The fourth is the Tissot that used to be Omega's equal, the brand people now think of as entry-level Swiss, and dismiss accordingly. Here's what they miss. As part of the Swatch Group today, Tissot sits at the affordable end, but in the mid-20th century, Tissot produced watches that competed directly with Omega in movement quality and finishing. A vintage Tissot from the 40s, 50s, or 60s, a clean automatic, a chronograph, or a dress piece with an original dial is genuinely undervalued because the modern brand positioning drags the vintage perception down with it. The same logic covers other quiet Swiss names that punch above their reputation. Longines above all, whose mid-century pieces are seriously collected. The tell is the same as always: the name under the 12, the movement inside, and an original dial. And the opportunity is that the market prices these on today's brand image, rather than what the vintage pieces actually were. The fifth lesson is the one that costs people the most. And with watches, it comes down to 2 things: the name under the 12 and originality. First, the single most important piece of information on any watch is the maker's name, printed on the dial just below the 12 or above the 6, and often repeated on the caseback and the movement inside. And the serial number on the movement can be matched to maker databases to date the piece precisely. Check the dial first, because the name is primary and the hierarchy is real. Second, and this is where fortunes quietly evaporate, originality is everything. All original in the trade means the dial has not been refinished, the hands are correct to the model, the crown is original rather than a swap, and the case edges have not been polished smooth, and the vintage watch market punishes the loss of any of these harder than almost any other collecting field. A refinished dial can cut the value nearly in half, so the habit that changes everything is to read the dial name, then leave the watch honest, because the worn, faded, original dial the owner thinks looks shabby is worth far more than the bright refinished one they were tempted to order. The sixth takes that danger to its most expensive extreme, and it's the watch hiding in the drawer that's worth more than everything around it. The Seiko that looks like a cheap old quartz and isn't. Seiko is the ultimate sleeper because the name sits on everything from $10 quartz watches to serious mechanical collectibles, so the untrained eye lumps them all together. The specific vintage references are where the money is. The early automatic divers, the 6105 and 62117, the chronographs like the 6139 that went to space on an astronaut's wrist, the King Seiko and Grand Seiko lines that rival the best of Switzerland, and deep-cut dress lines, like the Chariot, that hold their own next to a Cartier at a fraction of the price. These get inherited, mistaken for the disposable quartz Seikos everyone owned, and let go in a drawer clear-out or a bulk lot where a dealer offers one round number for the box of old watches. The mechanical Seiko, the diver, the King Seiko, gets absorbed into the pile with dead quartz watches worth nothing. This is where the most people lose the most money, not because the watch looked like junk, but because it was disguised inside a fast transaction designed to prevent itemization. And Seiko is uniquely exposed because one name covers both the worthless and the valuable. Grief and exhaustion are the picker's best friends. So the rule, plainly, never sell watches in a bulk lot. Never accept one price for all of them. Photograph every watch front and back. Read every dial and every caseback reference, and research each one separately, because the entire value of a box can sit in one watch nobody looked up. The seventh is the watch where value comes not from the brand at all, but from what it did and who wore it. The military and issued piece. Military-issued watches carry markings on the caseback, broad arrows, issue numbers, NATO stock numbers, service branch stamps that look like meaningless scratches to anyone who can't read them. And an issued watch with genuine military provenance commands a large premium over the identical civilian version. The field watches, the pilot's watches, the dive watches issued to armed forces around the world are a serious collecting field, and even humble brands become valuable when they carry a real issue history. To the family, it's grandfather's beat-up old service watch. To a collector, those marks are the entire story, because provenance is one of the strongest value multipliers in the market. And this is where the warning bites hardest, because well-meaning owners polish the caseback smooth to make it presentable and erase the exact engravings that carry the value. Evidence cleaned away is value destroyed forever. Those confusing marks on the back are not damage. They are the watch's identity papers. We've covered brands, movements, originality, and provenance, and the last three pull it together, starting with the detail that decides everything between two identical-looking watches, the movement and the dial. Two watches can look the same on the wrist, while one holds a common movement and the other a historically significant one, and the caliber inside carries real weight, a respected automatic, an early electric or tuning fork movement, a column wheel chronograph, a high beat caliber, all add value the case never shows. The dial matters just as much. An honest, original dial with even, age-appropriate patina, the tritium gone creamy, the printing crisp, beats a refinished one every time, while certain rare dial variants, a particular color, a specific logo, an unusual configuration, can be worth multiples of the standard version of the exact same reference. So, when you research, do not look at active listings, the watches for sale with hopeful asking prices, because anyone can ask any number, and those are fiction. Look at sold listings, what watches actually changed hands for, and match the exact brand, reference, movement, and dial. Active listings tell you what sellers wish. Sold listings tell you the truth. The ninth is the name that stayed while the company changed. The read it twice story, running through this whole market. Many great names were bought, merged, or repositioned, so the name on the dial tells you less than people think. Hamilton was an American manufacturer in its golden age and is Swiss-owned today. Bulova's independent American heyday is long past. Tissot is now entry-level Swatch Group, but once rivaled Omega. Even the storied Swiss houses moved through the quartz crisis and out the other side under new ownership. So a familiar name cuts both ways. A modern piece wearing a famous vintage name can be worth little, while an unglamorous vintage piece from that same name's real era can be the prize. The genuine article is the watch made by the original maker in its peak period, identified by the reference, the movement, the dial, and the case, not by the logo alone. And the market often prices these on current brand image, which is exactly the inefficiency, the person who knows exploits, while everyone else reads only the name. The 10th is the grail, where every principle compounds and the ceiling disappears, the most extreme version of the central truth, that the value was lost the moment it passed from someone who knew to someone who didn't. At the very top sit the watches that look like nothing in a drawer, an Omega Constellation pie pan, or an early Seamaster with an untouched dial, a Hamilton Ventura, or a solid gold deco Hamilton, a Bulova Accutron Spaceview humming through a skeleton dial, a King Seiko, or a 6/39 chronograph, a Longines or Tissot, from the era they ran with Omega, a military-issued field watch with its service marks intact. And here's what makes watches genuinely different from almost every other category. The whole thing sits in a drawer among dead batteries and spare keys. It looks broken because the movement stopped decades ago, and the single most valuable feature, the original dial, is the one people are most tempted to freshen up. Every lesson converges here: the brand and the reference, the movement and the dial, the originality and the provenance, the honest patina, the warning never to polish or refinish, and the venue, because where you sell matters as much as what you sell. A rare watch sold to a pawn shop or a general marketplace or a bulk estate buyer is sold to whoever walks by, while the person who will recognize and pay for it is a specialist vintage watch dealer or an auction house that reads references and movements for a living. So here's the checklist that flips you from the person being collected from to the person who knows. Don't polish it. Don't refinish the dial. Don't bin it because it stopped. Leave every honest mark and faded patch where it is. Turn it over and read the dial name under the 12, the caseback reference, and the movement inside, because the look of the watch is only the beginning, and the name and the numbers are the truth. Don't judge a watch by whether it runs. A service is cheap against the right piece. Never sell in a bulk lot. Research on sold listings, not active ones. And when you've found something real, take it to a specialist, not a passerby. If you recognized even one of these, hit the like button and comment below if you've got an old watch you can't identify, especially a plain or non-running one, and I'd be happy to take a look. Subscribe if you want the part of the market the resellers already know and won't share. Because the truth under all 10 is simple. These watches were never worthless. They were built to look like the ones people throw away. And the only thing standing between you and what they're really worth is knowing. That's not a coincidence either.